Listen, just one more thing.
Hello there. Welcome to my review of episode 5 of season 4 of Colombo, Playback. First broadcast on the 2nd of March 1975 on NBC. It was written by David P. Lewis and Booker Bradshaw. Lewis and Bradshaw worked on several writing projects over the years, including episodes of Planet of the Apes, Tenafly and Ellery Queen. Bradshaw was also an actor, appearing in the original Star Trek as Dr. Mbenga, and Coffee as Howard Brunswick, amongst other roles. This was the only Columbo episode they wrote together. Lewis died on the 25th of October 1992. He was 83. Bradshaw died on the 1st of April 2003. He was 62. The director was returning director Bernard L. Kowalski, coming back to Colombo after an absence of 4 years. The episode begins at a gated and guarded home, but even so, someone seems to be attempting to break in, or at least make it look that way, as he is actually the resident of the house, Harold Van Wyck, played by Oscar Werner. Werner was born Oscar Joseph Beschleismeyer on the 13th of November 1922 in Austria. He was accepted into the Austrian State Theatre at 18, the youngest person to do so. He debuted under the name Oscar Werner in 1941. Shortly afterwards he was drafted into the German Wehrmacht, but as a staunch pacifist he was determined not to fight, so purposely failed training school. Eventually he was assigned to peeling potatoes and cleaning latrines. In 1944 he secretly married half-Jewish actress Elizabeth Kalina. They had a daughter, and he deserted, taking refuge in the Vienna woods with his wife and child until the end of the war. After the war he returned to the theatre and began appearing in German-Austrian films, briefly moving to the UK to appear in an English-language version of one of his earlier films, The Angel with the Trumpet. After more work in his native country, he moved to the US to appear in Decision Before Dawn, but was unable to secure further work, so returned to Europe. In 1962 he appeared in his most acclaimed role in Jules et Jim. He would then return to the US and appear in Ship of Fools, The Spy Who Came In for the Cold, and Fahrenheit 451, amongst other roles, including this appearance in Columbo. His final acting role was in Voyage of the Damned in 1976. He died on the 23rd of October 1984. He was 61. Van Wyck leaves and returns in his car the correct way through the gates, chatting with the security guard on his way in. As he enters his house, we see there are security cameras inside, which are monitored by the guard we met earlier. He joins his wife, his mother-in-law and his brother-in-law, who are having drinks in the living room. His wife Elizabeth is in a wheelchair. She is played by Jenna Rowlands. Rowlands was born Virginia Catherine Rowlands on the 19th of June 1930 in Wisconsin. After college, she moved to New York to study acting at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. She gained some early roles on Broadway before being cast in the TV series Top Secret, and appeared in several other one-off television roles during this time. She made her film debut in 1958's The High Cost of Loving. In 1954, she married John Cassavetes, and between 1963 and 1984, they made 10 films together, occasionally appearing with close friend Peter Falk. She received an Oscar nomination for Best Actress for her role in A Woman Under the Influence, but she never pursued leading lady status, preferring more interesting roles in smaller films that really showcased her acting talents. In later life she would appear in more television, cropping up in Numbers and Monk, as well as taking a role in her son Nick's film The Notebook. Her last film role was in 2014's 6 Dance Lessons in 6 Weeks, before she retired. She is 91. Van Wyck argues with his overbearing mother-in-law, Margaret Meadis, who is furious with him and how he's running the company. Elizabeth and his brother-in-law Arthur make their excuses and leave the room, but Margaret insists Van Wyck stays. She tells him that due to his failure to run the company, she is appointing Arthur as the new chairman and expects Van Wyck to resign. She also has evidence of his infidelity, so Van Wyck has no option but to accept. It would appear that he's already thought of a solution to his Margaret problem. Margaret Meadis is played by Martha Scott, perhaps most famous for playing Charlton Heston's mother twice in The Ten Commandments and Ben-Hur. Van Wyck goes to his in-home security suite and replaces one of the tapes. He then spots his wife on the cameras and takes her to bed. He then sets up the tape to play on the CCTV system and sets the murder scene in his office, using his high-tech for 1975 gadgets, before setting a different tape to record while the security guard continues to watch the recording of an empty room. He then attracts his mother-in-law's attention, and when she comes to his office, he shoots her from out of sight of the cameras. He then sets the recording on a timer to automatically play after he has been seen to leave the grounds and arrive at the art show he is attending. When the recording plays, the security guard will see it and he rushes to the scene. Van Wyck gets the call at the art gallery that the murder has been discovered. And it's a very clever setup, as it seems like it's almost impossible to fault. But is it the perfect crime? Well, Colombo is just arriving, so I guess we'll find out. Colombo is in pretty poor health. He's fighting a cold.
Hey, don't get too close. You'll get my cold.
But plows on nonetheless. A sergeant shows him the supposed point of entry, and that the doors are rigged to open and close with a clap for Elizabeth's benefit.
You want to see something? Watch this. They got a bunch of these trick doors all over the place.
Columbo speaks to Elizabeth and finds out what she witnessed. She didn't see anything and is clearly devastated by the loss. Van Wyck is explaining to a sergeant what he thinks happened, or rather what he wants them to think happened. There's a sneeze from behind the curtain. It's Columbo, who is very conscientious and practices social distancing before it was trendy.
I've got a cold, sir. I don't want to get too close. Forgive me for not shaking hands.
He asks where Van Wyck was and why he thinks it happened the way he described. Van Wyck explains about the cameras and how the intruder must have been standing out of the way of the cameras. He's so confident that he won't be caught that he happily shows Columbo the crime happening and explains how it must have happened that way. Columbo asks for the tape to take with him. Werner does a great job of playing Van Wyck like a child, showing off his new toys whenever he's explaining how his gadgets work.
It's a special watch, you see? It prints out the numbers. My company's making it. I designed it. It's called Meterstar.
It's in stark contrast to how cold-blooded he is when committing the murder. And if we hadn't seen him do it, it would be pretty hard to tell it was him. Columbo then goes to see the security guard and finds it odd that Van Wyck handed him the phone number of the art gallery rather than write it down on the security log as he normally does.
I got this funny habit. You know, when a person does something one way and he suddenly does something another way, I immediately think...
Columbo then returns to Van Wyck for his just one more thing and asks if the intruder actually took anything. He then does a bonus one more thing where he asks why there wasn't full camera coverage in the room, and Van Wyck says they were expecting a thief, not a murderer. Plausible, but I think Colombo is starting to get suspicious. The next day, Colombo returns, and with him is the welcome return of Dog. Colombo is inspecting where the intruder got in and out, and he's curious to know why there aren't deeper impressions in the soil if he was leaving in a hurry, jumping out of the window. He's also confused as to why the intruder didn't tread any soil into the house. Van Wyck suggests that maybe he took his shoes off, as Colombo has done. So far he's doing pretty good. Colombo still only has a sliver of suspicion. Dog, meanwhile, has found Elizabeth and is enjoying some attention from her. Colombo goes to speak with her, and Rowlands plays Elizabeth with such a delicate touch, so sweet and pleasant, that if she had been the murderer, she certainly would have no trouble getting away with it. She tells Colombo about the sound she heard and how that disturbed a bad dream she was having, but after seeing she was safe in her room and speaking to her husband, she went straight back to sleep. Colombo then pays a visit to the art gallery, where he has another encounter with modern art, which he still doesn't quite understand.
Now this here, I see it doesn't have a title.
That?
Yes.
That, sir, is the ventilator for the air conditioning.
I'm not sure if this was the first show to do that gag, but it has to be an early contender. The gallery owner confirms his alibi and shows Colombo Van Wyck's invitation. At the Van Wicks, Elizabeth says she wants to take over the chairmanship, news which Van Wyck does not take well.
You think I would remain with the company in a subservient position to my wife?
But he's much more confident of soft-soaping his wife. It's quite a horrible scene to watch as he manipulates her and pretends he's only trying to keep her safe, when she is clearly fiercely independent and desperate to get out of the house, something which I'm sure we can all relate to. Colombo arrives with a gun in order to conduct an experiment to see if it resembles the noise that woke Elizabeth. This is the first time we've seen Colombo fire a gun, and it clearly makes him uncomfortable. Elizabeth did hear the gun, and it caused the automatic door in her room to open. Colombo tells Van Wyck that this means the shooting must have taken place earlier, and Van Wyck gets quite animated, insisting she couldn't have heard a gunshot at that time. Colombo says that must be the case because the door opened. She doesn't remember the door opening, but it must have happened for her to have been able to see the objects in her room, light coming from the room outside. Van Wyck says he didn't hear a noise, and it's possible that Elizabeth did dream it and the door was faulty. With this level of gaslighting, he might just get away with it. Colombo is getting lunch and watching a football game on the TV. When they cut to an instant replay, he's struck with inspiration. He goes to see Arthur and the Midas' business office in order to watch the murder tape. With different parts of the tape on two screens, Colombo spots the difference. At the Van Wicks, the psychological games continue before Colombo turns up. With the tapes he was looking at, he asks Van Wyck to play both tapes. He gets Van Wyck to incriminate himself just a little bit more before the tapes play. Colombo then reveals he knows Van Wyck did it, and how, but that Van Wyck had made one mistake. When he committed the murder, his invite to the art show was still on the table, but gone when the security guard found the body. He took the invite with him, proving he was still in the house when the murder was committed. Van Wyck tries to convince Elizabeth he didn't do it, but she won't believe him this time.
I saw her alive before I left. Tell him, Elizabeth!
This is yet another brilliant episode. We're back to 75 minutes for the first time in a while, and the pacing is spot on. The character development and performances of both the Van Wicks is exceptional. Werner perfectly plays Van Wyck as an, at first, sympathetic character who quickly becomes one of the series' most villainous. Between the affairs and the psychological conditioning of his wife and the desperation of wanting to retain his position, and of course the murder itself, make him thoroughly unpleasant. It's a joy to watch him hoist on his own petard. Rowlands is equally as good, although with marginally less screen time. She's very sympathetic, regardless of her wheelchair, as this put-upon, somewhat naive wife of this monster. Her independence at times comes through, only to be squashed by her husband under the guise of protecting her, and it's all done relatively subtly. Falk is his usual reliable, brilliant self as Colombo, perhaps aware of how Van Wyck treats his wife in public compared to how he treats her in private, hinted at by how he suggests that she doesn't accompany him when he reveals Van Wyck is the murderer, but doesn't actually do anything to stop her, knowing she will follow and hear the whole thing. There's plenty of time between Colombo and the killer, and we get a few scenes with Dog. Absolutely a 5 out of 5 episode. Thank you. Goodbye.